time. Jackets off.
That gave me the goosebumps. Just watching their rivalry being played out there in so many epic moments. And once again, it's Magnus versus Jan for the championship.
Let's go! Oh, mid-game. Hold on, let me check. Let me get my song selection.
And this is the one we've all been waiting for, but Magnus keeping us waiting for his second move. He starts with the Queen's Pawn. Magnus pausing to choose his music. And what are we going to see? Is it going to be Queen's Gambit? Still all of the options available. It is a Queen's Gambit declined.
A very solid opening by Black against the Queen's Pawn opening. It just keeps everything strategic, the fight a little bit more positional. But what Magnus has just played is the most can with a surprising tiny thing, and it's the Tarrasch variation. He strikes with c5, and this usually leads to a lot of tension in the center.
A lot of tension, but potential simplifications as we see one of the most solid variations. They call this the Berlin of 1d4, because often queens come off the board if white had pushed a central pawn there. This is actually to the c3 Sicilian with colours reversed. So something that Canty here might be excited about, but in the meantime, very well trodden paths. Black has an isolated Queen's Pawn, but the rest of Black's position, very active potentially. He's going to gain some time against the White Queen now. Jan Nepomniachtchi, he might also kick back this bishop, first of all. And, okay, first looking off, just trying to recall his opening theory. Magnus tends to avoid these types of positions, at least in recent history. This is known to be extremely solid. Every player with the black pieces has been kind of adding this to their repertoire. But it shows that they're taking it so seriously. Pretty much their A-list openings now in use.
And a big board, right? Jan Nepomniachtchi is going to have this isolated Queen's Pawn at the center of the board, which becomes a target for white to play against. The more pieces that come towards an endgame, it would favor the white pieces. And meanwhile, a lot about getting the attack on the king's side when fighting against the isolated Queen's Pawn. So we'll see what kind of an opening this develops to. 8-6 hits the bishop.
And it's been a while since I've studied this one, but I believe you can actually take this knight. Of course, you can just retreat your bishop. There's only one trick in the position not to fall into. You cannot take this knight and then take this pawn with your queen. There would be a trap.
Really nicely pointed out. And I think, David, maybe you can show the end bit of that trap, why the pawn isn't hanging just yet.
While Magnus thinks he's pondering whether to retreat or take this black knight, if he were to now capture the black knight, this is actually a trap that I've used with success when I was about 5-6 years old. But queen takes pawn now. Looks like you're winning a pawn, but whoops, the defender of the queen is removed with a check. And of course, queen takes queen at the very end. This would be a huge, huge mistake. So I believe opening theory continues, bishop takes, and then you retreat your queen. You have a choice of a few squares. And there's still a lot of pressure on black central pawn a bit later. But Magnus is about to choose his move, it looks like. If he keeps the tension, he knows his queen is about to get hit anyway. So it's about whether you change the pace of the game or whether you're happy to step back. He does indeed trade off that knight and retreat his queen.
Trades do tend to favor the side that's playing against the IQP and the side with the isolated Queen's Pawn, looking for those tactics, looking for the attack, one piece off the board, that knight which potentially could have jumped to the center of the board. But in return, Jan gets the bishop pair. He gets a really nice piece on that f6 square, one that cannot be challenged. The knight will come out next. And always, Magnus will have to watch out for a central d4 break, the d-pawn moving one step ahead.
Yeah, in the meantime, it's a bit of a race, right? As you say, Tanya, if black gets this knight out, is able to move the queen and kind of centralize rooks, you're kind of supporting the central pawn, the isolated pawn. You're getting ready to push it forward, blow open the position, which will definitely profit the bishops. But white is very, very quick now. Next move, rook to d1, and Magnus will try and gobble up this pawn before Jan is fully ready. So, yeah, both players spending a minute or two here. Not the type of attacking position we were hoping for here, maybe, Canty?
Yeah, it definitely boring, and to say the least. Definitely boring, at least from the black standpoint. Like, from here, I just hate these type of positions from black standpoint, because, I mean, you're just kind of holding. Yes, you are playing Magnus, but you do want to at least fight a little bit, too, as well. Like, here, I just have an isolated pawn. White has a very easy plan. Rook f to d1, rook a to c1. And, I mean, this is just Magnus's forte. It's already happening. Rook f to d1, rook a c1. we just got a great, easy game to play. I mean, even knight b5 to d4. Of course, they say, who is this, Boris Basket? It says the most important square for the pawn is the square in front of it. But okay, you know, that's what you had. The square in front of the pawn is the most important. He plays knight d4, right? So, of course, you blockade the pawn. You go bishop f3. You trade some pieces. I have a pawn on d5. I can play this game forever. Magnus is very comfortable.
Magnus is very comfortable, but key moment. If there's a trade on black's terms, if black gets one more move now and takes the white knight, then white will be forced to agree to an isolated pawn of his own. And that is not, I think, what Magnus wants. So a bit of a choice. Either he supports his knight in the center, or he trades off one of these two pieces.
He does take the bishop off the board. And that's a bit of a non-standard decision because you allow Jan to recapture with the pawn. A pawn is a pawn's best friend, supporting that d5 weakness, and Jan goes for it. And now there's mobility in the center. Also watch out for Jan's knight jumping forward. Ideas of knight e5 eyeing the c4 square in the air as well. David, how do you evaluate this structural change?
Well, I think long-term, very much a gain for black. But look at this. Short-term, white has some tactics. Knight to e4. Magnus's idea. There is a pin on the central file. The black queen would be vulnerable if you take this knight. This knight is poisoned. White is attacking the queen twice with the queen rook, and only defended once. So the pin allows the white knight to jump forward and capture a bishop. So now it's actually bishop versus knight. I'm inclined towards the bishops in open positions, but black has a very harmonious structure. No real weaknesses now. Everything covered. Queen and knight work quite well together, so I think Jan has reason to be happy too. We see the fans.
Love it. The live audience here. It's a packed house, as Mike said earlier. A full house here on the final day of the Champions Chess Tour, season 24. We'll have a champion at the end of the day, a best-of-6 marathon between these two players. And it has been a lot of trades, a bit of a slow game, but not toothless just yet, right? Because of the big imbalance that you pointed out. A bishop versus the knight. And usually when you've got so many pawns scattered over the board, Magnus with 2 pawn islands, a healthier pawn formation compared to Jan's 3 pawn islands, it gives Magnus just a little something to play for. He can just keep the game going.
That's right. Fewer islands are always better. I mean, Norway has plenty of islands here, so I'm not sure how true that is off the chessboard. But yeah, essentially black has 3 pawn islands, 3 sets of 2. And they could be weaknesses. I mean, I'm only looking really at one square. I think this is the one Achilles heel in the black position. For now, it's nicely defended. But yeah, long term, there's quite a few pawns on light squares that could fall victim to the white bishop if the queens ever disappear.
But the good part about putting the pawns on the light square, the same color as your opponent's bishop, is that you restrict the activity. He's taken away a b5 square. And I think Jan also has ideas of planting that knight once again to the center of the board. And then perhaps pushing the b pawn and then going further in with that knight to that c4 square.
Yeah, clearly Jan wants to do something active in the next few moves. What does Magnus have up his sleeve? Pawn to b4. He strikes on that flank first. And a bit of a face from Jan, a bit of a frown. That's a bit surprising, I've got to say. It felt like white should be playing in the center, maybe trying to improve the bishop, but perhaps it's aiming to develop that way. Pawn to b5 was the idea, hitting the black knight. The knight moves preemptively. And it's all about that square you mentioned, Tanya. Ooh, this... Okay, queen to d4. I was going to say, if black gets one more move, pawn to b5 and planting the knight into c4, maybe he should do that anyway now. But that looks like a stallion more than a knight right now.
And it looks like you have that move, that opportunity to do it right now, right? Push that pawn to b5, and he's trying to evaluate what happens once Magnus plants that rook on the dark square. That rook goes to c5, and who does that favor? Also, a move like b5 invites perhaps the white queen to jump forward onto the board. You've created some weaknesses on the queen side. Queen a7, hitting that pawn on a6. How easy or difficult is the decision to push the b pawn right now for Jan?
It's no easy decisions right at this level.
Not against Magnus, anyway.
Not against Magnus. Okay, whose position do you guys prefer right now?
I actually like white because of the bishop. I am just a fan of bishops, and I know that generally positions do open up. So that would favor the bishop here. I do like this idea, too, of rook c5 at some point. I can expand with a4. The knight is a slower piece, so I'm a fan of the faster play. So if b5 does happen, I always have a4 up my sleeve to really loosen that. Obviously, if ba, we go bishop takes a6. We get a free b pawn that's passed as well. So I feel like white has maybe, slightly better pool. Of course, engines like, 0.62 for white here type thing. So 97, though, I like it. Nice trades from Jan here. Just playing a position, trying to improve is what we're always trying to do. in our games and when we're playing is improve our pieces. Did he just go back 95?
Yeah,
Automatic.
that's a silent draw offer from Jan right now. Magnus has the option to come back with the bishop and repeat the position once. Will he do it?
Yeah, if Magnus retreats his bishop, which is about to get traded off, I think knights and bishops disappearing would lead to total equality. If it's just heavy pieces, neither king is too weak, kind of both challenging for the c-file, that looks roughly equal. But yeah, it's a tough decision. I think I would bring back the bishop and then laugh and say, no repetition for you. I'll try something new. But of course, there was tension between the queens as well for a moment.
Yeah, and that's also sort of the Soviet school of chess, right? When you can repeat, do it once, do it twice, but don't do it the third time. Let your opponent get the false feeling that you're happy with the draw and then snatch that feeling away. So Magnus, will he go for that? But if this does end right now, if this was a 3-4, he does repeat it. Jan comes back, big moment for Magnus, right? Because if this ends right here, right now, game 1, I think that's a bit of a more draw for Jan than it is for Magnus. With the black pieces, without any problem at all, a confident hold in game 1.
A professional approach, right? You know, win with white, draw with black here. If I'm Magnus, okay, you know what? Maybe take the draw here because it is very equal. But of course, you could push maybe with Queen A7.
I think he plays on. Predictions before we go into lines.
100,000 on 100,000, Tanya. Let's go. I'm gonna say he plays on.
I said he plays on.
Oh.
Oh, he does play on.
Well,
Of course he
even,
plays on.
Even.
No draw yet.
Man, that's funny. Well, guys, you can guess the move and get involved as well. To download Take. We've been talking about it all week. You better have the app. Let's go get it. Make sure you download Take and experience the chess fandom like never before. Visit go.chess.com/takex3 or use exclamation point take in chat.
Yeah, and anyone guessing that Black's knight would just yo-yo back and forth between the d7 and e5 squares, I mean, they deserve to win this Guess the Move competition. But yeah, in the meantime, Magnus trying to open up the queen side. There will be targets on that flank. I really like what Magnus is doing. Of course, the evaluation bar does not flinch. It says totally level. But Black might have to show some accuracy in the next few moves. There has been this trade. Jan has burned a few tempi. Just anytime you start kind of rotating your piece like this, just bringing it back, forward, going for the draw, you do tend to kind of lose focus on the bigger plan. And I'm not sure what exactly he's been trying to achieve, Jan Nepomniachtchi. The black queen now might need to start switching flanks. She might need to drop back. That's a big weakness on the b7 square. And Magnus, okay, I was going to say, he's going to switch his attentions. He's now most likely going to move his queen away out of the attack of the black knight and indirectly start attacking the isolated pawn. It's like, oh, wow.
Is he going to sack the queen?
Quick decision.
Is he
Where?
Rook c4? Rook c4, rook d2, rook c8, rook d2. I mean, it's possible, but that's crazy.
He does it.
Oh my goodness, Magnus out here going crazy, big dog. I was just playing, but I wasn't.
Look at the blue arrows.
Ooh, oh my.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's the only move. He can't take the queen.
I mean, the crowd going wild. Oh, he's sacking his queen. I don't know why. You know, for
The
people.
fans are just pre-moving. They're pre-moving for
Yeah.
when he plays queen takes pawn.
No, queen takes f2 is crazy. I saw this rook c4 idea to play on, reminiscent of the game 6 of a world championship, where he sacked his queen there in the Catalan game and won. So rook takes c4. I was like, yeah, I guess he can do it. And you are playing for 2 results there, but queen f2 is crazy though. That's a move.
Yeah, I mean, nice spot there, Kanti. Rook takes c4. It wasn't on my radar at all to sacrifice the queen, but I think we have to show
He
this.
misses it.
Oh my goodness! Now I'm just up a pawn. It's a dub.
Wow, I think we have to backtrack and show what Jan Nepomniachtchi missed there, because that was a crazy moment. And it was here. Rook takes c4. It looks like the white queen is attacked and has to move, but nope. He ignores this. If you take the white rook, the white queen takes the black rook on d8, and Magnus would be a pawn up. But likewise, if you take the queen, rook takes rook is a Zwischen Zug, a Zwischen Schach, and in between check there, attacking the king. And at the very end, it would be 2 rooks versus a queen. White has also won a pawn in the process, totally winning, as we see by the eval bar. But queen takes f2, such a difficult move. I think this would have needed a shower of gold coins on the board if it had been played. The idea is queen takes queen. It's actually black who gets the 2 rooks for the queen with a check first, and ultimately a level-ish endgame. And instead, after queen takes f2, king takes. Now you lure the white king out with a check, and ultimately a drawn rook and pawn endgame with equal number of pawns. But look at what Magnus is doing. Let's catch up with the game, because after rook to a8, he isn't happy sacrificing the queen once. He sacrifices it a second time with rook to a4, and we're going to see this endgame now. wow, rook and pawn endgame, but white has this extra pawn on the king side. Is this enough?
Yeah, that's the big question, but Magnus will play this on forever. And I want to just come back to what, James, you mentioned. Game 6 of their World Championship match, Magnus sacrificed the queen for a rook and a minor piece and went on to win that game. And that pretty much decided the whole match, right? And here he's sacrificing his queen again. And for Jan, you know, these are moments that don't leave your head. Those flashbacks keep coming back.
Yeah.
But queen takes pawn. He did pause. I thought he was about to find that move. But it's so hard to understand how important that was. And there was nobody tapping him on the shoulder and saying, hey, this is the moment you equalize. And by the way, it looks like Magnus is doing Magnus things. The pawns have disappeared on the left side of the board, but Magnus wants to create connected passers right now on the right side. What do you think about this last move, liquidating further?
H4 is a nice move. If this pawn is captured, the white rook will slide the whole way across to the right side and regain the pawn. Black's pawns are too weak. I just want to mention as well, I've won this exact endgame before against Gukesh. 4 versus 3 with pawns on the same side, but Black's isolated e-pawn is such a huge weakness that it's actually going to force the Black king to kind of decide you have to defend the h-pawn, the e-pawn. It's not easy, and ultimately he was so scared of the white h-pawn stepping forward and locking the king side there, Jan, that he did decide to trade off pawns, but this is so difficult to defend. I don't think Jan's going to be able to. Magnus is able now to play around for 50 moves. Black has 2 isolated weak pawns. White's 3 are connected. And yeah, this is, I think, even objectively, perhaps lost already.
Yeah, I mean, getting a first game dub in, a first round lead for Magnus would be absolutely disastrous here, you know, for Jan. He had to keep it solid, and he was so close. He had to find that one tactical element in the position, a tough spot, but queen takes pawn, a beautiful one, a missed opportunity there right now. And we see the bar. It says that this is close to a winning advantage for white. And we're talking about an endgame. You know, the Magnus touch, the golden touch that he has in these positions. It's going to be a miracle if Jan survives this now.
Ugh, it's just going to be suffering for the next 30, 40 moves for Jan Nepomniachtchi. He might be dancing around, look at his head go, listening to some music, but I think that's just to hide the
pain
terror.
inside.
Exactly. Terror of having to defend this against the world's best ever endgame player. Magnus improves his king, defending his pawn, freeing up the white rook now to improve itself. Slides up.
That's it. And at some point, he'll start advancing the f-pawn up the board, combine the king with pushing the pawns, rolling them up with the threats along the lateral 5th rank, putting pressure on Black's pawns. He first improves the position of the rook.
Okay.
And it's a good idea, right, to play slow. You don't want to rush with pawn moves here. You can play another 100 moves, improve everything, tire your opponent out, bring him down on the clock, and then make one pawn move.
Exactly. Just only start setting the traps for the opponent when they're down to 30 seconds left. However, Magnus does push his f-pawn. I think this is part of the plan, part of the winning plan. Actually, sooner or later, the white king might try to snake around using the h-file to walk up the board there. Also, the white rook is going to step 1 square further forward just to pin Black's pawns on the 6th rank to the Black king. Oh, this is going to be so difficult to defend for Jan. So many questions to answer. He's down to 2.5 minutes, equal time for both players. But Magnus, this is, I think, the dream first game for him. Often in one-on-one matches, especially these long 6-game matches, you just want to apply pressure, 0 risk, show that you're in the ascendancy.
And it felt like Jan had done everything right out of the opening. You know, he traded the pieces off, kept his weakness under control, activated his knight. But in those tactics, which we often talk about as Jan's biggest forte, as his biggest strength, that's when the mistake happened.
Yeah, tactics and a little bit of maybe psychology there too as well. I'm in an equal position here. I wanted, I played for the draw. I wanted to. They say, how do you play for a draw? It's play for a win. Maybe look to be a little bit more active there. He was very comfortable getting the draw there after knight e5 back to d7. Then looked for a little bit, okay, knight c4, then missed the tactic. If he would have probably maybe thought, even just maybe another 30 seconds, maybe he would have chose a different move there and allowed Magnus to get, this very comfortable position now. Up a pawn, I'm going to milk this. I'm just going to play very slowly, wait for that mistake, and then, hit him with Devereski page, 237, and somewhere in the middle of the book in those 4 rook and game chapters.
He's about to hit him with an f5 if you're not careful, with Black just pinned on the 6th rank, forcing the Black king to fall back, which would mean the white king would move forward if you try to unpin yourself from the threat of f5. Jan feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, look at that evaluation bar. The advantage has been growing move by move. Magnus was hinting at getting his king forward. The black rook and king just preventing the white king's advance, but this tension, this pin on the 6th rank is so hard to deal with, so painful. I think f5 is just guaranteed next, and white is ultimately going to trade off his g-pawn for the white e-pawn. White's 2 connected pass pawns in the center are likely to win this game. Black's h-pawn just irrelevant here, just doesn't help at all. And Jan, he's looking away from the board right now. I think he's fighting the urge to resign. 1 minute left.
Yeah, he doesn't want to continue the suffering right now. And like you said, regardless of anything black does, white is getting those central connected pass pawns. He gives a check, the king will fall back. And now black has to move back with the king against the idea of f5, but f5 on the board. Expecting that to happen, or will Magnus just play around a little bit, enjoy his position, shift the rook, shuffle?
I think both strategies are viable here. You can shuffle, you can wait, but pawn to f5, played by Magnus Carlsen, is the most direct attempt to win. He wants to get 2 connected pass pawns together. A trick there from Jan, a deflection tactic, but ultimately this capture comes with a check. White's going to be 3 pawns up. Yes, the pawns are a bit ugly, separated here, not connected, but this is more than enough.
Look at the speed with which Magnus is playing. It's like he studied these endgames when he was 3 years old. He's got them at the back of his hand. He has barely taken any time to think of a single move or the plan forward. And he's played it to accuracy. You know, you don't see the bar going down even once. Not a single inaccuracy in this endgame by Magnus. All best moves. That's how good he is.
Yeah, he just loves playing these end games here too. It's also, they say in the end game, it's easier to calculate, but it also takes a lot to calculate because there's so many moves that can be played here. Rather than a middle game where you have a few options, you calculate those. But in the end game, there's lots of options, but it also is a lot of calculation as well. We got these extra 2 pawns here. This one's a clean one. Very easy for Magnus.
Yeah, and for the black king, it's caught in 2 minds here. He will have to stay in the center of the board with his king, Jan Nepomniachtchi, because of white's e-pawn. But ultimately, one of the 2 pawns is going to act as a deflection. One is going to decoy the black king and rook away. And then it's going to be the other pawn that wins. Magnus just choosing which pawn to bank his hopes on. He's pushing them both in tandem here. The white king cut off temporarily, but it can start moving across.
You could also move the h-pawn now 1 step forward, a capture on that, and then there are checks to answer as well. So he could go for tactics, he could go for a slower approach right now. Either way is Magnus Carlsen making this look clinical. He's making it look easy. Let me tell you, if I had this position with the white pieces, I would have bungled it up into a draw a long time ago. But just the way he plays, and he goes for the idea of 8-7.
I only see one trick here for Jan Nepomniachtchi, that is to run the black king into the corner somehow and hope for stalemate. Hope to give up the black rook, a kamikaze rook as they call it, as long as there are no checks. But ultimately Magnus will not fall for that one. And what to even play here? I'm expecting him to bring his king across to stop that white h-pawn. Of course, if you take that white h-pawn, you get skewered. The white rook steps up to the 7th rank with a check, a rook trade, and it will be game over. Okay, Jan does guard the pawn with his king. Magnus.
Oh, this idea. Maybe he goes like, he goes check first. Okay.
Ooh.
6.
Goes forward with the king. I thought he'd go into the corner and hope for stalemate there. But now black is frozen. The pawns are coming.
I think he's about to resign. How do you even answer this? You've got to go king to f6, closer to that e-pawn. The rook holds the h-pawn. The king holds the e-pawn.
Oh, you just go e7, I think. e7. This is a nice move. If king f7, you can queen and then rook check, which is nice.
Tactics everywhere.
Or even rook
Even
check.
with 2 pieces on the board. Yeah. Love it, James.
Very nice.
And we might see queen versus rook if Magnus pushes his e-pawn right now. He'll promote, but black might be able to grab some material in the meantime. We see a check. White king forced back.
Oh, 10 seconds for Magnus, though. I think we're going to have the king and queen versus king and rook.
There it is.
It's happening. But the rook is going to be very disconnected from the king. Will Magnus find a way to...
He played that move with 2 seconds left, by the way. And Magnus, he was thinking about promoting to a knight with check, but it didn't quite work. And now the black king and rook so far apart.
And there can be dangerous checks that end up winning the rook, and he's got to get the black rook close to the king.
He's getting jumpy, Magnus. He's made a couple of moves now with 1-2 seconds left on his clock. He made the last move with 1 second left. And, okay, he pins the black rook. He's closing in, but there are some stalemate tricks here. If you walk too close, you need to keep your queen and king and knight move away from each other. That tends to be the trick. Magnus just trying to gain time on the clock, though. Very professional.
And he's managed to get those extra couple of seconds. He's also moved his queen far away, so no ideas of stalemate just yet, but that's the one trick that White has to be careful about in these positions, as Jan tries to achieve those setouts by getting his king to the corner.
Yep. Oh, Jan leaning back. He knows that the net is closing around the black king. He has to cut him off on the 6th rank here. But there we go. Checkmate imminent. Jan resigns. Magnus takes the first win.
That was awesome. I mean, Magnus actually played an incredible game during, obviously opening, middle, and in game here. But Jan had some chances. I think the knight c4 was obviously a blunder there, giving Magnus exactly what he was looking for, just a little bit of something. I want something from this game, and Magnus got that after the knight c4 mistake from Jan.
Instead of f6.
And
Yeah. But also winning against.
Yeah, of course. But crazy.